This is the OFN Today for another Monday. We only have a couple more of these to go, and then thank goodness it's on to September, and that means the NFL season will hopefully start. We are going to talk Indianapolis Colts football in just a couple of seconds with that man, Jake Arthur, contributor for Colts.com. And before we do that, Ryan Dunleavy, my co-host, joins me once again. How's it going, Ryan?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing all right because I'm sniffing the kickoff 2020. Can't wait. So far, so good. Nothing crazy has gone on the last few weeks. It's all college football related.
Yeah, that's where the craziness is. I was just talking to Saquon Barkley right now, and he's still having a hard time digesting there's no Big Ten football season, no Penn State season to keep him occupied on Saturday.
Yeah, and you're in Big Ten country, Jake. I know there's a lot going on with Justin Fields and his petition, and they're gonna. I really give the coaches and even especially the players a lot of credit for look. This is something they want to do. I'm not sure it's going to change anything, but hey, more power to them for at least trying.
Yeah, absolutely, and it just kind of shines a light on college football is not quite as uniform as the pro sports leagues. You got one conference doing one thing and everyone doing kind of their own thing, and it's a very confusing time for college football.
Yeah. Hopefully they can make a bad thing and turn it into something good. Because we got to get. I think what we have to do is get rid of the NCAA. I think in some respect, and just for football at least. I still love our March Madness, and we can't touch that.
Yeah.
But hopefully this will turn something into a positive. That's the only way we can look at it. Okay, Indianapolis Colts football, Jake, and we've had you on a few times, especially right after the draft, to talk about the Colts. And I think I mentioned this. We did an AFC South show. I did with Mark Lawrence a week or two ago, that I look at this Colt team and I think that now that Phillip Rivers is here, it's the first time in a while that, and maybe even the Super Bowl year, I think this is the best the Colts franchise has looked when you put in front office, head coach, and now quarterback. The threesome, which is so hard to get in the NFL, the Colts have that now, thanks to Phillip Rivers, and hopefully he'll stay healthy and give the Colts a shot for another Super Bowl.
Yeah, absolutely. You of course like to have those three kind of pillars always settled, and it looked like things were on their way last summer. Everyone kind of still accelerating in their careers together. Chris Ballard, young GM. Frank Reich, new head coach. Andrew Luck kind of getting the second lease on his career, kind of course, hit that little hiccup with Andrew retiring. But, if you can get another good year or two out of Phillip Rivers, maybe gets a little reinvigorated in a new environment, but with some familiar faces, then absolutely, there's not many better situations you can ask for given the circumstances.
And not only Phillip Rivers, but we have to also talk about the big addition, which we did talk about, of course, a few months ago, of DeForest Buckner and what that is that is going to do to impact the Colts defense.
Yeah, that should be huge. In this specific defense, the Colts consider the three technique defensive tackle to be the most important position on the defense. If they're going to have a dominant high-end player at any position on the defense, they want it to be there, and they think they're getting that in Buckner. After Aaron Donald, if you polled a lot of front office people around the league and said who would you want there, Buckner might be the answer for quite a few of them. So the Colts, with getting that three technique defensive tackle and having a high-end will linebacker at Darius Leonard and another inside and outside corner in Kenny Moore, they really think they've got the ingredients they want on defense with those three specific guys.
I want to take it back to Rivers because you can't really. That's really the whole key to the Colts season. Really is quarterback position. I obviously covering the Giants most of my career here. Just saw Eli Manning retire from that same draft class. Ben Roethlisberger just missed a whole season, injuries. Now he's coming back. How much physically does Phillip Rivers have left? I don't know if you've had a chance to see him throw the ball at all, and so far in training camp or whatnot. What does he have left physically in the tank? It's great to be motivated, but you have to actually have the skills when you approach 40.
Yeah, absolutely. Physically, I mean, things look, just as fine as they have the last couple years. And if you look at last year, it wasn't really physically the issues people had with him. It was the turnovers mainly. Just speaking with, people who watched more Chargers football the last couple years after the Colts signed Rivers, kind of the consensus I heard was mainly he felt like he had to do a lot and kind of play hero ball, and that led to a lot of turnovers. But physically, he's still aggressive, can push the ball downfield. His arm strength was never like his premium asset anyways, but he had enough to be dangerous. And that appears to still be the case because, in these practices, he can still whip them downfield. He's been utilizing the deep targets that he's gotten T.Y. Hilton and Paris Campbell. So physically, it doesn't seem like there should be any issues. And it also doesn't hurt that he might be behind the best offensive line he's ever had. So an older quarterback like that who likes to be aggressive and take chances, it's certainly good to have that protection for him.
I think I read somewhere where Jacoby Brissett said something like, "I'll be back. I'll be a starting quarterback again." Mm-hmm. Do you think that's with the Colts? Is his future with the Colts? Or is that one of those, they replaced me, I'm going to go somewhere else and prove them wrong whenever I'm a free agent?
Well, the quarterback situation beyond 2020 is a really cloudy one to look at, because Rivers may not just be here for a year. He and Frank Reich have both said, they'd love for it to maybe be a couple years that he's here. So Rivers has said that he'd like to go coach his oldest son in high school when he's done, and he's got that head coach in waiting.
Yeah, wasn't he already hired there?
He's been hired as the head coach in waiting. So, that's around the corner, whether it's, 1, 2, or 3 years away, what have you. So Rivers may not be done here after this season. They, of course, drafted Jacob Eason in the 4th round. That's probably a year or so project until they really know what they've got there. But Rivers and Brissett are both free agents after this season. So there's a lot to be seen there. Jacoby's got a lot of tape as a starter out there for teams to see. The word is he may have a special package of plays throughout the season. So, some team will want what he's selling, whether that's still with the Colts or not. We've seen, or we've heard before, an analogy to when Teddy Bridgewater had an opportunity to leave as a free agent a year ago to become a starter, but he elected to stay because he liked the atmosphere with the Saints and liked that situation. That could be what it's like with Brissett. So it's just really tough. Him being a free agent is something new for them because there's been so many trade rumors about him over the past couple years, and they were not going to take a cheap deal on him. They didn't want to send him somewhere that wasn't a good situation for him, and they weren't going to let him go for pennies either. So they value him a lot. I think there's just a lot of moving parts to be able to say anything definitive.
Well, one thing's for sure is if Phillip Rivers does stay healthy and has a productive first year with the Colts and he's going to return, the chances are very likely that a team is going to offer Jacoby a pretty sweet deal. And I'm sure the Colts will just let him go. And that's just the way of the world. And Jacoby is a starting quarterback in the NFL. I think he's proven that.
Yeah, I think, again, he's had plenty of good tape, enough to where I think if he leaves somewhere in free agency, he'll get the shot to compete as the starter. You of course want to have a guy like that have the confidence in himself that he's going to start again. And honestly, I mean, before he got hurt last year, after the Colts beat the Chiefs and they had a couple other big wins, people were saying, maybe this is a dark horse MVP candidate. Whether that was strong language or not, those discussions were being had on national TV. So we'll have to see. I would think a team would give him the shot to start if he's lured
Absolutely.
away in free
Absolutely.
agency.
Yeah, we don't have, unfortunately, 32 good starting quarterbacks in the NFL right now. So
Yeah. There's always a
yeah,
handful of teams looking to
yeah.
upgrade.
And part of the problem too, the second half of the season last year for the Colts was once a couple of injuries surfaced, especially at receiver, it just wasn't the same. And now I look at thanks to the draft, I look at, and you mentioned the offensive line being clearly the best offensive line Phillip Rivers has ever had. You look at this talent, if everybody's healthy, receiver, tight ends, running backs, this offense can be one of the better offenses the Colts have ever had, especially talent wise, all across the board. We know how great Peyton is or was. We know how great he made the Colts, but he didn't need to have even this much talent. There's a lot of talent on this team, a lot of skill position talent, along with one of the better offensive lines in football.
Yeah, and it does all start up front with the line. The Colts finished 7th rushing last year, so that's great. They added a Pro Bowl fullback in Roosevelt Nix, and they added Jonathan Taylor, who's one of the most accomplished running backs in college football history. So you'd have to think the running game is a little upgraded again. They have the same 5 starting offensive linemen coming back, so things are looking good there. But injuries were especially the thing to hold them back last year. When everyone's healthy, this group of weapons could provide pretty much everything you would want as a group. They may not have that Marvin Harrison or Reggie Wayne specifically, like Peyton's years, but Paris Campbell, if he's able to stay healthy, offers a lot to Love out of the slot. T.Y. Hilton has proven himself when he's healthy to be a huge playmaker. Michael Pittman Jr. is really intriguing as a young, big-bodied pass catcher. People have kind of pointed at comparing him to Vincent Jackson when thinking of the kind of guys that Rivers has had in the past. And then again, that running game. And Rivers loves his tight ends too. I think Jack Doyle is going to be someone who gets a lot of catches this season. Has quietly made a couple Pro Bowls in his career. So especially fantasy players, they'll probably come to be endeared with Jack Doyle a little bit this year, I would think.
But by the way, before I switch it back over to Ryan, is there something missing on the offensive unit?
No. So for face value among the starting group, I don't think there's anything missing. I think the one thing you want to look at though is the offensive line depth. Joe Haig went to the Buccaneers. He was a guy who could play any of the 5 spots for them. And including the preseason, we have seen Haig start, or not start, but play at each of the 5 positions throughout his career. Josh Andrews also, I think, went to the Jets. So their 6th and 7th offensive linemen from last year both are on other teams. So they've got some young guys out there. Danny Pinter, who they drafted in the 5th round, they've raved about him. And then Jake Eldrin-Camp and Raven Clark, that's now your backup offensive line unit. You of course hope, your starting 5 plays all the time, which they've had pretty good luck over the last season and a half with those guys not really missing much time. But NFL injuries happen, so hopefully their young offensive line behind the starters can step up if they're needed to play. I think that's your only concern non-injury wise when you look at the Colts offense.
What you mentioned Jonathan Taylor. I loved watching him in college. I actually covered him in high school in New Jersey. Is he the guy, or they had Marlon Mack? I was surprised when the Colts went with Taylor there. Is he definitely the guy? Are we looking at a split thing? Does Marlon Mack kind of fall through the cracks? It almost reminds me of when the Seahawks drafted Rashad Penny a couple years ago at the end of the first round. It was like, well, you still have Chris Carson, and Rashad Penny's never got a chance. Is that what's going to happen to Taylor, or does he leapfrog Mack?
So they've been talked about as a 1-1 punch. They don't want to give anyone the lead right now. Marlon Mack has earned the starting spot, and he'll go, into camp as the starter. And with no preseason, he'll probably go into the regular season as the starter. But them drafting Jonathan Taylor didn't really have anything to do with Marlon Mack right now. He will be a free agent after this season, so it could be a little foreshadowing. But they love what Mack brings to the table. And, when he missed a couple games last year, the Colts weren't quite as dangerous on the ground. It was pretty visible. He's just got really good vision and feet. They really do like him. So I don't think Taylor's just going to come in and leapfrog him. I think they'll both have plenty of games where they're the featured guy, I'm sure. I think in the end, it's just going to come down to who's got the hot hand. That's the guy who's going to stay on the field. But the guy that's not quite talked about enough is Nahim Heinz. That's going to be their primary pass catching back. He's been really dangerous in that role the past couple years. And as we've seen throughout Phillip Rivers' career, Darren Sproles, Austin Eckler, Danny Woodhead, those type of guys. He likes the little pass catching backs. So Nahim Heinz is probably going to have a pretty hefty role as well.
Mac, by the way, before Brian asks another question, Mac, though, he's still the number one fantasy option.
God, that's really tough. In my rankings, I have them ranked right next to each other.
Right after each other, right?
Yeah, I think it with them, the fantasy value boils down to who's going to get the primary goal line touches.
Yep.
I mean, Taylor is bigger and stronger and probably a little more powerful. So if I had to take one of them, I would probably take Taylor just because his touchdown upside is a little higher. And especially if it's a dynasty league, Taylor could find himself being one of the league's top 10 running backs within the next couple years. So
have you ever seen Darius Leonard miss a tackle? Does he ever miss a tackle?
God, I don't know. That's tough. Probably not looking specifically at him. I mean, realistically, he has had some missed tackles, but he's there's a reason he's the prototype for what the Colts like in a linebacker. He's fast. He's got really long arms, and he just doesn't really miss very much. And I mean, it's funny because they drafted Bobby Okereke the next year, and he's pretty much a carbon copy of what they had in Darius Leonard before. So there's very much a reason why they like guys like Leonard.
Talk about more on that defense, especially the injuries that hurt a couple of key guys. You got Tyquan Lewis, who had the toe injury. He played about half the season. And our boy, Kamiko Toure from Rutgers, only had 4 games, ankle injury. So those are a couple of key guys on defense.
Yeah, so Lewis seemed kind of a strange situation last year. I believe it was a toe or a foot that he hurt. And then when he came back, he just wasn't quite himself. He wasn't able to – they weren't seeing Tyquan Lewis, the player they knew they had in practice. It's just like that injury kind of wasn't allowing him to be himself after he returned. But as a rookie, he showed a lot of promise. He's the type of guy they like to use that can – play 3 technique defensive tackle or kick out to defensive end. They really like his versatility. He's making a little noise so far in camp, so hopefully he can rebound and have a big year 3. Toure, I think you guys are really going to be pleased about that. Being from your neck of the woods, he was really, really good last year, just in those first 5 weeks. Unfortunately went out week 5 against the Chiefs. It was a game where he terrorized Pat Mahomes throughout the game. But no, there's really high expectations for him. He's been Robert Mathis's protege pretty much his first couple years. That's Mathis's project for sure. He's got that speed and that explosiveness in the bend to get around the edge that is just it's a rare combination, but it's something you really want in a defensive end. So as soon as he's, active again and is rejoining the team on the field, I think the league is really going to remember why he was so good earlier in the year.
Justin Houston led the team with 11 sacks and didn't miss a beat. Is he still at the top of his game, or have you noticed anything at all that leads you to believe that he's towards the last few years of his career. Or at least, again, we know he is, but anything that actually is proof that he's slipping, because it doesn't look like it stats wise.
No, I mean, I don't know that he's still 22 sack
No.
Justin Houston like he was early in his career, because that's just rare productivity. But I mean, there's no reason why he couldn't be an 11 sack guy again. And I think most teams would take double digit sacks out of their main edge rusher. He's still strong. He's got speed. His biggest thing I've noticed is his power. I think he was really reinvigorated with the Colts. You know, probably had a bad taste in his mouth, you know, leaving his longtime place with the Kansas City Chiefs, and really kind of got a shot in the arm coming to the Colts. One thing I think they've done with him well is they're not maxing out his playing time. They like to roll out that defensive line in waves, and they really knew how to use him. And I think he had 6 straight games with a sack at one point during the season. So he really hit his stride with the Colts. And adding a guy like DeForest Buckner now, I think that'll be huge, because he's going to have a dominant 3 technique next to him, who's going to command a lot of double teams. So that's going to create more opportunities for him, and he knows what to do with those opportunities. So I don't see any reason why he can't duplicate what he did last year.
Tell me about Xavier Rhodes is there now, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
As you were talking about Justin Houston, I thought you were talking about Xavier Rhodes for a second, about a veteran guy who might be reinvigorated. Xavier Rhodes was like, at this time last year, before the season started, people said, he was a top 5 corner in the NFL. Then he had a miserable year, got cut for cap reasons, as we've seen guys do. How big a deal is the Colts adding him, and can he get back to that level where we were talking about him as an All-Pro?
Kind of a similar addition as Houston, like you were talking about. You want to approach with cautious optimism, because at one point that was an elite player at their position in the league. Rhodes closed. There was the whole big thing when 2017 or 2018. No, I mean they really hope they can capture even a fraction of the success he had with Minnesota, because the Colts have a couple defensive back coaches that were with Xavier Rhodes when he was an All-Pro. Jonathan Gannon and Alan Williams are defensive backs coaches with the Colts, and they were there when Xavier Rhodes was playing at his absolute best. And I think the Colts' heavy zone defense and the coverages they use really fits Rhodes well. He said he just feels a lot more comfortable in this style of defense. I know injuries were an issue that cropped up last year as well, that maybe didn't allow him to play himself. So that, of course, is paramount. He's got to stay healthy. But the Colts could really use him being healthy, because he essentially is being the role of Pierre Desir last year. The Colts, their heavy 3-man cornerback group was Pierre Desir and Rock Ya-Sin on the outside, with Kenny Moore on the inside. And the difference in that equation this year is Xavier Rhodes over Pierre Desir. And especially with Marvell Tell opting out for COVID precautions, they could really use Xavier Rhodes. He doesn't have to be the All-Pro, just has to be, a pretty good corner. So I think they're confident they can get that out of him.
So Rivers is there as like a second chance, extended your career life. Justin Houston is there as like a second chance, extend your career life. Xavier Rhodes is there. That tells me it must be veterans like playing for Frank Reich. Why? Why is it that this is a place guys looking to extend their career come?
So Chris Ballard and Frank Reich, they're fully interested in getting football guys. They want a key group of veterans. They want to build this locker room to keep each other accountable. Frank was a player, of course, for over a decade, so he gets it, and he's just easy for those players to flock to. One of the first things everyone was saying when the Colts hired him was, this was a great hire. He's a leader of men, and that's really proven to be the case. He he just has a good message to sell, and everyone buys it. He preaches team, and he's honest with guys. He does keep guys accountable themselves, but he meets with guys, all throughout the week, all the time. He's very much easy for them to relate to, and they trust him. He's going to give guys opportunities to succeed. The Colts don't have an issue where the best player isn't playing anymore. There's been times where in the past where maybe a guy it's very evident he should be seeing the field. They let the best guy win. Those guys, they get the playing time. So I just think he's very relatable for the players, and they feel the respect from him.
Sticking in the secondary, a couple more before we let you go. What's going on with Hooker, with Malik Hooker? Because here's a guy who had a big college career, first round draft pick, and he's had his injuries. He had injuries when he was a rookie. He had some injuries last year. Is that the only thing that's holding him back from being a star?
The thing they've been mostly saying with him is just consistency. He does brilliant things every so often that, it tells you why he was, I think it was like a 15th pick, or I think that's where he was picked. His best play last year was in the first game, and he intercepted Phillip Rivers. He had a nice one-handed interception. But no, it's just consistency. Communication is big with the whole secondary in general. Guys got to be talking out there. Things like that were evident when Kenny Moore went down late last season. Just consistency, making sure everyone's in the right place and, reading the right things. He has improved as a tackler. He's gotten a lot more physical since he's been in the league. He was one of those guys that was just kind of known as a ball hawk and didn't, he wasn't very physical, didn't get in the mix a lot, but that's improved. So they have seen some improvement there. But I think they're looking for that consistently week in and week out. The physical and athletic traits have always been there. He was always young as a football player when he joined the league as well. He only had one season of starting at Ohio State, so I think they're just looking probably for him to take the next leap. And he was compared to Ed Reed a lot coming out, but the difference with it was because he has rare ball skills, but a guy like Ed Reed was so cerebral, and he knew everything he was seeing on the field too. And I'm not trying to compare him to Ed Reed, but something that helps take a safety to the next level is just being able to process and understand everything they're seeing on the field. And, that might be an area they're looking to see that in.
Marvin Tell, we didn't talk about the COVID, the fallback of your team. So talk a little bit about any key players like Marvin Tell that will be lost or right now is not able to play because of COVID.
So the Colts only had 3 guys opt out for COVID, Marvell Tell, Roland Milligan, and Sky Moore. Moore was Moore and Milligan were primarily special teams guys. Milligan did come in and play nickel for a good stretch of last season while Kenny Moore was hurt. Tell is probably the biggest name out of that group, just because as a rookie last year, he converted from safety to cornerback, and he really never looked like a liability out there. He was really someone to get excited about. Big-bodied guy. His athletic scores before the draft were outstanding, and he held his own last year in coverage. And like we discussed with Xavier Rhodes, if Rhodes were to get hurt, or Yasin, one of the bigger outside corners, they would have expected Tell to come in and take quite a few snaps in that instance this year.
Well, Tell's out for the year.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, he's opted out for COVID reasons. So it's it's a little bummer you won't see him this year, but you gotta respect guys' decisions to take these precautions.
Last question, and then Ryan, if you have anything else, as a Jet fan, I got to ask you about this Rex Hogan connection, because they have an awful, especially the secondary. Are there which of the secondary players that the Colts have lost to the Jets or have freely given allowed the Jets to take will the Colts miss the most?
Pierre Desir. When he wasn't injured, he was always very reliable. He's a very good tackling cornerback, not afraid of anything. He'll probably be most remembered here for his battles with DeAndre Hopkins. They both took their shots and had their big plays, but there was a stretch there where Desir was able to cover Hopkins like a blanket, and that's no easy feat. He's rangy. He's a long corner. I think he's over 6 foot. So, if he's healthy, I think that is the bigger loss in the secondary that the Colts had for sure.
I just have one question.
Mm-hmm.
What's Andrew Luck doing? Does he live in Indianapolis? Does he have a presence with the team, and like as a the alums sometimes hang around their team, sign autographs, whatnot, or has he moved to a farm and we're in Idaho and we're never going to see Andrew Luck again?
No, as far as I know, he still lives here in Indy. He does keep in contact with a lot of the guys, especially last year when we were able to be in the locker room and all that. People would ask other guys, Ryan Kelly, Anthony Costanzo, Jacoby, if they talk to him, and those are some of his best friends still. So he does still have a presence. I don't know how often he goes around the facility. I think there was a couple times they mentioned he had visited, but no, he's still got a presence with a lot of those players on the team. And as far as I know, he's still here. His wife just had a baby last year or early this year or 2019. But nope, he's Andrew Luck, the dad, now here in Indianapolis.
I did have another question, one more, and that's special teams, because the place kicking situation is up for grabs at this point, even though McLaughlin looks like the guy, right? I mean, Vinatieri's not coming back.
Well, there's not quite been a straight answer on that, other than he's been rehabbing his injuries from last year. But I mean, here we are. It's training camp, and they have 2 kickers in. So right now, that's the focus, is the 2 kickers they've got on the roster. McLaughlin filled in very well for Vinatieri. I think it was in the 4 games that he played for the Colts. Only missed 1 kick combined out of extra points and field goals. So that was really good to get that out of him in a live game situation. Rodrigo Blankenship is a nice story. Kickers, it's often just a ho-hum vanilla position, but he's kind of got a moniker from college, Hot Rod, and he's got the glasses, so he's easy to root for as well. Preseason makes things a little more iffy because you want to see those guys kick in real games. But with no preseason, there's going to be some things they look at. Of course, makes and misses obviously will be a big thing, but they want to see how the ball leaves the guy's feet. They want to kind of the Colts do a lot of kicking in-game simulations in their practice. If they're running 2-minute drills and everything near the end of practice, they'll pepper in some kicking drills into those live scrimmages where the clock is ticking down and you need to drill a 43-yarder or something like that. So I'm sure, especially with no preseason, they'll put more of an emphasis on that to figure out who their best kicker is.
Jake, great job as always. We look forward to talking to you during the season, and we can get all your work at Colts.com, correct?
That is correct.
Appreciate it, Jake. Thank you very much.
Yep. Thanks for having me, guys.
All right, Jake Arthur. We'll definitely have Jake on a few more times, and that's because I think the Colts very well might be my pick, Ryan, to represent the AFC
in the Super Bowl.
Yes, if we remember where the Colts were going into last year, if Luck would have been there were a lot of people who liked what they saw of the Colts the year prior. This was going to be a better team. And then everything kind of fell apart last year with him not being there. And then he had so many injuries to key positions. So as long as everybody's healthy, Buckner on defense, Rivers on offense, I think they got a shot.
I would disagree. I think if they were in the NFC, okay, I could give you the Colts as the NFC winner. I can't see a world where the AFC winner is not going to be Baltimore, Kansas City, or Houston, one of the teams with the three really good young quarterbacks.
I'm surprised you say Houston, because I don't see Houston here on your sleeper list.
Because I really think it's Baltimore and Kansas City. So I really think it's Baltimore and Kansas City. But
they're a heck of a sleeper. I mean, really, I was shocked to see Houston as a 45-1 shot to win the Super Bowl.
If you told me their coach was somebody not named Bill O'Brien, they would be on my sleeper list. I have no faith in Bill O'Brien winning a big game.
I know. But again, it's for the 45-1. So a $10 bet is nothing much to snore at for $450.
I pick teams with coaches I trust, and
don't you think if they had? Don't you think that's the reason they're 45-1? I can't think of any other reason why they're 45-1.
I mean, J.J. Watt gets hurt every year, and then the defense kind of starts to crumble. I mean, the Texans are kind of the same story every year. So
still a story that a lot of teams like the Jets would like to be in.
Yeah. I mean, if you're telling me who would I pick, the Texans or the Jets, I mean, that's a different story.
That's why I see 45-1. They have to be one of my sleeper teams. We'll have our official sleeper teams and our Super Bowl picks in a few weeks, but we figured, hey, we've got a few minutes. Let's throw around some of your sleeper teams. And a couple of them, I actually, 2 or 3 of them I might agree with out of the 5 the most. We'll start with the 30-1 shot, which is really the bar that I put for official sleepers at 30-1. Minnesota. I'm very surprised the Vikings are 30-1, considering a playoff team. You think maybe they could even take the next step. I know they're going to be counting on a lot of young guys this year, and maybe, especially on defense, maybe that's the reason. No Diggs on offense, but still 30-1.
Yeah, I thought that was a steal for a team that's in the playoffs pretty much every year. Like I just said, the NFC, I think, is kind of wide open, especially compared to the AFC. That's a team you expect the Vikings to, win a playoff game, be in the Final Four of the NFC, and then you never know what happens. Kirk Cousins obviously kind of got over the hump last year with winning a playoff game. I like their offense. Secondary worries me, but that's a team that that they're not going to bomb out. The Vikings are not going to be 3-13, so you can count on them being 9-7, 10-6, and then get in the playoffs and see what happens.
Right. Also, I'm intrigued by your second pick, Atlanta at 35-1. The only thing that I might hold back with them, even though I'm thinking, okay, again, I like the number, is just the way that you felt about Bill O'Brien in Houston is how I think about Dirk Cutter with the Falcons. I just think I can't see Dirk Cutter on the sidelines of a Super Bowl game as the offensive man in charge. I just can't.
Yeah, I get it, but I look, they were in the. I thought Dan Quinn was one of the best young coaches in the NFL a couple years ago. They've obviously taken a turn for the worse in blowing that Super Bowl lead. I think that kind of hung over the team, hung over the city. Matt Ryan has an MVP, right? And how many quarterbacks in the active quarterbacks in the NFL have an MVP? Rodgers has them. Brady has them. Is that it? Mahomes, is that it? I mean, Matt Ryan's one of 4 or 5 quarterbacks active in the NFL who's won an MVP.
Well, he's got his. It's going to be.
Breeze.
It will be really interesting this year because you have Breeze, Brady, and Ryan in the same division.
And now you give Ryan Todd Gurley, who knows what he is this year. Julio Jones is still a monster. Ridley's there. I mean, I love that offense. I just, you don't know about the defense. You don't know about if they need a change from hearing Quinn's voice. You thought he might get fired last year. They're going to give him one more roll at the dice. Again, I like that team, kind of like the Vikings, where I expect them to be 9-7, 10-6, and I see the NFC playoffs as a free-for-all.
They have to stay healthy on defense. They've been decimated on defense the last couple of years, which is the whole reason why they haven't been able to pick up the offense that's what got them to the Super Bowl, was their defense really aided their offense, and that's been just decimated the last 2 years. So Tennessee, again, I don't get 40-1.
Right. That was like what's to say, that was like taking candy from a baby. They could have been in the Super Bowl last year. Like, they were the AFC Championship game team last year. Now, look, if you want to tell me you don't believe in Tannehill doing it again, or you don't believe in Derrick Henry doing it again, I might believe. Yeah. I might agree with you. I agree. I mean, it's going to be really hard for them to replicate.
But they're 40-1.
They could still add Jadeveon Clowney, which would bolster the defense. I think he's probably still one of the favorites. They're probably one of the favorites to sign him.
Yeah, that number might be cut in half if they sign him.
Yeah, look, they were on the doorstep. They were leading that game before Patrick Mahomes' crazy sideline touchdown run in the AFC Championship game. You tell me, no team that was that close to the Super Bowl should be 40-1.
Yeah, and by the way, imagine taking Vrabel and moving him over to Houston.
Exactly. There you go. Exactly. That's a bet too on Mike Vrabel, who I think it just makes chicken salad.
Yeah. The other two, a little bit more surprising. You're going with a couple of very young quarterbacks: Arizona at 45-1 and Denver at 60-1. I'm assuming these are more playoff sleepers than Super Bowl sleepers. But tell me a little bit about why you like those two teams.
Well, I'll give you Denver. Like I said, I think that's more of a playoff sleeper. If I had to go 5. The first 3 were safer bets. Minnesota, Atlanta, Tennessee, teams I see in the playoffs. Denver could blow up. They could be 3-13, but I just think their offense is like electric, like track star electric, with young guy after young guy. I mean, I can't even name them all. They have so many young guys, right? They have KJ Hamler, and they have Drew Lock, and they have
they got Fant, tight end, and yeah.
They have who's their number one? Cortland Sutton. Yes. They just have speed and young, explosive, athletic playmakers.
And now everywhere. They got 3 running backs.
I like 3 running backs everywhere. Melvin Gordon and who was the guy from Philip Lindsay? They just have weapons everywhere. I love Pat Shurmur as an offensive coordinator. He obviously didn't get the job done as the Giants head coach, but did really good things as the Vikings offensive coordinator, as the Eagles offensive coordinator. I just like what he can be drawing up there. Seems like a team that has be a fun video game team to play with. And then similarly is the Cardinals. And I think they're kind of like my Broncos of the NFC, and I'll say it for the 3rd time. The NFC to me is just wide open. I could tell you 10 teams from the NFC could make the Super Bowl. So I went with a team like that, the Cardinals, a team on the rise. You give Kyler Murray, who I thought was fantastic last year. You give him Hopkins. I like Kenyon Drake as a running back. I just think they're on the rise. I think that's a team that very easily could come in second in the NFC West, sneak into the playoffs, and then, like I said, you never know.
All right, well, I'll give my sleepers the next time we do a show because we're out of time. Ryan, appreciate it. Any top stories?
You gotta give me one. I just unloaded 5 on you. Give me one.
Let me see. I'll tell you, give you one that will probably be the most fun to talk about. Cleveland.
Okay.
On paper, there's too much talent on that team. Now, I don't know if Stefanski's the right guy.
They were one of mine last year, Greg. And
I didn't take him last year because I didn't trust the head coach. That's why I was saying it's up to Stefanski. I don't know if Stefanski is the right guy, but I have much more confidence that Stefanski knows what he's doing compared to what they had last year. So,
guys, Freddie Kitchens, Giants tight end coach.
That's where he belongs forever. No more head coaching jobs for him.
I just don't know that I trust Odell Beckham not to blow that whole thing up. I still don't know that I see a world where Odell can, can keep his emotions in check and can keep his happiness in check if he's not getting all the touches that go to Landry and Kareem Hunt and Chubb. I don't know.
There's a lot of talent there to spread the ball around. Yeah. If Baker Mayfield has got to play better, that's what Stefanski's number one job is going to be. See, I also like the fact that Cleveland now, because there was so many people that picked them last year and they were a disaster. Now everybody's staying away from them. This is their year now. So you know how that works. All right, so we'll go over.
20 years.
Yep. We'll go over more sleepers next time, and then soon we'll have our picks. We'll probably even at some point in the next week or two start making predictions because we don't have any games to talk about, preseason games, or there shouldn't be any other reason for us to change our minds unless somebody gets hurt in practice, which is possible.
Yeah, big injury today for the Cowboys.
Oh, yeah? Who's that? I missed it.
Gerald McCoy.
Okay. How long?
Out for the season.
Wow, huge. Okay, there you go. See? And I wasn't going to pick the Cowboys anyway, but that's a key injury. Too bad. All right. Thanks, Ryan.
Sounds good. Thanks.